Game changer. These are going to change the game, how I use my van. And most importantly, this. This small but surprisingly heavy device is going to change the way I camp and travel in my van. Now, when I built out my van back in 2019, we had choices. We could build our own power system, and we had the intent of doing that. You know, getting a lithium-ion battery, getting all the different cables we needed to connect everything together, run power from the battery back, from the house battery generator back, having a system to do that, possibly adding solar panels and putting in a distribution center so we could run power to all the things in our van. Well, at the time we didn't know what we wanted in the van, so it kind of sat for a little bit and we didn't know exactly where we were going to put everything because we hadn't used it yet. I didn't have a fridge yet. I had a fan and I had some USB outlets. That's about all I had when I started. So we never got that thing in there. Well, we found a reconditioned Goal Zero Yeti 1000 watt hour battery system. And at the time, that was the best on the market. And we paid about $1,000 for that thing. Because $1 per watt hour, that's about what, or per watt, that's about what it is. Well, things have changed a lot since then. At the time, that was as good as it got. It gave us several USB outlets. It gave us some 120 volt outlets if we needed them. And it gave us a cigarette lighter plug and a couple barrel plugs that we could plug the fan in and another outlet in, so we were all set. Well, since it was already reconditioned, we could never get that over 90% full. So we were always a little low. And I could go 2-3 days once I got the refrigerator on a trip without having to plug back in. And I got the plug in the back of the van on the panel, so you could just plug in a cable into it. Well, when we first did that, we were living in a house and I could back up to an outlet and plug it in between trips and things. Well, eventually we moved into an apartment and I can't do that anymore. So every time I needed to recharge it at home between trips, I'd have to lug the thing out, bring it inside, plug it in. And by the way, that Goal Zero Yeti charged at 55 watts. It would take a day and a half to charge that sucker. Useless. Really bad. If I was on the road, I could every 3 nights at least pay for a campground with power, plug in, and have to be plugged in all overnight. And now I'm up to maybe about 85 or less % is what I can get into that battery, because it was early generation, earlier, life cycle battery generation. Just doesn't hold a charge as well, doesn't handle the cycling, and I would cycle that sucker down. And, lithium batteries are designed to do that. But now I've got myself Ecoflow Delta 3. Same size battery capacity that I have in there. So that hasn't changed. but now I get up to 100%. This is designed for 10 years of full dead, full dead, full dead, full dead recharge. Recharge it in just over an hour with household power. Recharge a little slower, definitely, if you plug in a cigarette lighter, because you're limited to the output of the cigarette lighter. You can do an hour and a half in solar. I think it takes 1,000 watts in solar. But I never set up solar on that van. I have some portable solar panels. You spend all day moving them around from place to place to follow the sun, get out of the shade. But the big deal now is we now have this little tool that is going to charge from our alternator. And unlike taking it off a cigarette lighter with a wimpy little cable at, a low wattage, this sucker is going to use this hunk of copper and charge this thing at 800 watts. So I can go from dead to full in an hour and a half of driving, if it's all the way down. If I use it every day, and when I'm traveling, like I usually have to go just for a drive for somewhere almost every time I'm camping, just anywhere I go, it's going to be at least a half an hour to 45 minutes. That'll probably top us off every time. So this is going to change the game. Now, other big differences in this from what I had. Got a couple of barrel plugs. Probably going to have to do a little rewiring to make what I have work in here. I still have the side does it open it from? Your old-fashioned cigarette lighter type thing. That's going to power my fridge. And in theory, since I drive that thing as a daily driver, even when I'm not camping, I'm going to be able to leave my fridge plugged in all the time and recharge it every day from this. It's going to be interesting to see how well that works. Up top here, with a little slide back door, we've got the ability to charge from solar here, or charge from the cigarette lighter if I needed it. Charge from AC power if I need it. And this is where this beast plugs into here. On the reverse side, we've got 3 grounded outlets, 3 non-grounded outlets. These are 120 volt outlets. 2 USB-A. One at least is 100 watt output delivery port. I think actually both are. So you can run your newer laptops off of this without having to have an adapter. No wall warts, nothing like that. Just plug your MacBook or some of the newer PCs straight into that. And a couple of older USB-A outlets. This is going to change how I travel. I no longer have to worry about finding power every 3 days. I can travel to where I want. I can hit those national forests like crazy, those campgrounds with no power. I love those. They are so much more convenient. If I'm in the Wisconsin state parks, there's a different rate for sites with power than the sites without. I can always stay in the cheaper ones. They're almost identical, other than do they have a power pole? That's the only difference. And traveling Michigan now, I can really focus on their state forest and less need to stay at their state parks. And I like the state forest much better, because those are the ones that are a little more like the Wisconsin campgrounds, where you have individual sites and you don't have that wide open field where everybody does what they want, and you may have to park specifically close to a power pole, even though you have this massive site. So the next thing to do is to take the time today and figure out how to get all this into my van and running this beast of a cable from the battery compartment, which is under my feet as a driver, back to the back section. Now, luckily, hopefully it's helpful, we ran a cable about this big back there at one point, just the single positive from that battery compartment back, and there's some spots that it hopefully will give me a way to chase that through. I'm hoping, and I don't have to rip everything out to do it. So that's the next portion of our day. all cleaned up. So here's our current power center hiding under here. Everything is on one side. We got 4 USB-A outlets, only 2 120 volt outlets. This isn't going to change much, so we still have our cigarette lighter and 2 barrel plugs for running alternate things like our max fan, and this was the inputs. Everything on this is on one side. On the new one, inputs on one side, outputs on the other side. Except the inputs also include that on the inside. It's kind of odd. So this is what I am replacing. Go Yeti 1000 early generation on that. And like I said, the input power is only like 50 some watts, and it just takes forever to charge. Initial install done. Alright, I got the engine running because the system came with only 20% in it, so I'm actually watching it charge right now. So my battery compartment's hiding under here. You can see here's my new cable running through off the corner of this, running to the back, runs out the back of my seat, kind of runs under the seat there, goes behind my wall over here that I put in. Now all of this I had to take out to get to what I was working on. So I had to remove my drawers. It's running right along the base behind all of this and pops out over here. I had a very simple installation of the alternator charger there. Main cable's coming in here from the alternator charger. This is the one that runs over to the unit here. When I started, before I put everything back together, I was at 20%. Let's see if this shows me. I'm already at 48%. This thing is just cranking the power in. Now what I need to do is replace my barrel plugs that were on the Ecoflow with the right size, or not with that were on the Yeti with the size that fits on here. So that's my next step of installation, and then I'll figure out how I'm going to configure that sitting up there, replace that, the Goal Zero, and figure out how I run all my rest of my cables. Now the issues I had in the past, in a past life, we ran a cable from here, came over, went down under here, came back up here, and runs all the way back to right behind where the power station goes. I could get one of these 3 screws out. I could get one of these 3 screws out, and then I realized back here it was going to go through a hole that I would have to drill out larger, replace the whole thing. Just was not going to work. So I just found a simpler path, and ultimately that simpler path, when this van with almost 200,000 miles on it finally gives up on us, I just put another $1,000 into it this week for a new alternator belt for the serpentine belt and the tensioner pulley. I'm glad I did it before I put this in. Otherwise, if I had problems, I would be blaming the system for something that it wasn't its fault. So that already happened. So I know my alternator, my serpentine belt, those are all solid going forward. So there you have it. Quick install. Ecoflow Delta 3 Plus, I think that's what that one is, and the alternator charger. Totally changing how I'm going to be camping in the future. Not a difficult install at all, especially with something that has the battery inside the vehicle, not out under the hood. It's under the hood, you got to go through the firewall and all of that. That's a whole another thing to deal with. But in a van like this, so simple. Now, this was the Ecoflow 3, Delta 3. The Ecoflow Delta 2, of the same size, is being blown out. They're getting rid of those. I bought this one on a pre-order before they were really released. Now we're just past Prime Days. They were practically giving away those 2s. I was looking at an extra battery pack saying, hey, can I, because they have expansion batteries. so I could double the capacity, although I don't think I'm going to need it with that fast a recharge. But if I had double the battery capacity, I wouldn't have to even think about it at all. I could sit still longer and deal with things that way. But they were selling the Delta 2 in the same capacity as this one for way less than just a battery. They're just trying to get rid of them right now because they're really trying to roll out these Delta 3s. So that's my first look. First impressions, very happy with it. The app is great. I could immediately see that it was connected. I could see both devices independently. I can see how much power is flowing through them. It is really a great app. I look forward to using that. The only thing I have right now is to spend a little time on Amazon ordering myself some new plugs so I can connect my Max Air fan directly to it, and figuring out how all of the cable management is going to happen. I do have a couple of USB things that can live in the van, specifically the wireless chargers on either side of our bed. I love having those. So you just sort of set it down next to you and you go to bed and it's charging overnight, even if it is a slow rate. If I want faster charger, when I'm driving, my phone charges from 50 to 100% in like 20 minutes on the USB-A that I have up front right now at 45 watts, I think it is, off the cigarette lighter. So thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching this. I hope you got something out of it. I'll see you on the next one. Get on out there.